I just got three things to say. God bless our troops, God bless America, and gentlemen, start your engine!
Welcome to the Stire Sound podcast with your hosts, Trey, Stire, and Jack Noel.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Episode number 19 of the Stire Sound is here. And boy, we've got a lot to talk about today. Off-season races all over the world happening. Some team changes. It's going to be a jam-packed episode. Thank you for joining us, whether you're on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or maybe even iHeart Radio. Thank you for tuning in. I am Trey Stire, your host, of course. We start off today's episode. Let's give you a little bit of a rundown of what we're going to be covering first here today. Paris Supercross just took place a few days ago. We're recording this Tuesday afternoon. Vancouver World Supercross race, of course, round 2. Argentina, round 1 the weekend prior. So we will be covering some WSX stuff as well. Finally have some more team news. As I expected, the KTM news was revealed the day I was editing episode number 18. We finally got to see Eli Tomac and Jorge Prado aboard their KTM. And of course, we got to watch Eli compete in Vancouver for the first time on the KTM, plus some MXGP silly season news to cover. And at the end of the episode, I'll run down some of the point standings from around the world, from World Supercross, Australian Supercross, Partzilla Arena Cross back this weekend in Fayetteville, Arkansas, to keep you up to date on who's in the championship fights around the world. But thanks for joining us. Episode number 19. Let's hop into it. Joining me, as always, from the Dirt Bike Depot WMR KTM team, who just revealed their 4-man lineup for the 2026 season. Jack Noel is here. You just told me before we hopped on the air that bikes are in. The 2026 preparation for the DBD team is well underway. Third year of really being a full-time team, and you can talk about the lineup and give us what your preparation and what your status is looking at right now as you guys continue to build toward 2026.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been, had a interesting year so far. I mean, 2025 was good to us, and it was good to us and it was bad to us. It was highs and lows and whatnot. So, we came in 26 kind of on a interesting note. Like, we had some highs that we could say, these things are great, and then we had some things that were like, these are really bad. So, not really revamp the roster too much, but I think holding on to a guy like Gage is important, right? I mean, he showed week in, week out that he's a main event guy, and I think that he has the ability to compete inside the top 15 and every weekend and really be in that top 12, come, when the season starts. So I think bringing him back is a big plus for us. Bringing a guy like Jace back who, maybe didn't have the best results, had a couple of injuries kind of holding back throughout the year, but I think Jace is, hopefully comes in strong next year. It bummed he didn't get to race Supercross at all, but if he comes in healthy and 100%, I think he'll be ready. He's been racing a little bit that Partzilla Arena Cross series, so that's been good. Marcus Phelps as well. I think he kind of had a down year. I think he kind of had some things not go so much his way, and I think he's got more in the tank, and I think he's coming at this year a little bit more serious and a little bit more with some more intensity and a little fire under his ass to kind of get things rolling. It's going to make or break for him. It's coming to that point in his career where if he doesn't start making things happen, it's going to be over before he knows it. So it's good to bring those two guys back. They're great for the team. They're super good guys to be around. And the addition of Jackson Driscoll, a formerly Dirt Bike Depot sponsored rider back when he was an amateur, spent the year with Rock River. He'll be our supported rider, so he's pitting with us under the tent, but he's kind of doing his own, not his own program, but he'll be our support rider for the year. I'm excited for it. I think it's good to have 4 guys, under the tents, and hopefully, bearing injuries. I mean, it happens in the sport, but hopefully all guys can come to the first round of the East Coast healthy and yeah, it seems things are moving in the right direction right now so far in our off season, and just trying to finalize a couple more sponsors and get these guys' bikes ready. And these guys have been riding, so it's good to see that, and it's nice that these guys aren't switching bike brands, this year, and kind of keep it consistent, kind of keep the look the same, and kind of maintain our status as a solid satellite KTM team. And bearing that Julian Beaumer won't be racing any Supercross this season, will be the lone KTM 250 team on the East Coast. So I'm excited for it. I think that the team is moving in the right direction, and although it might not seem like a big step going forward with maybe the addition of new riders and whatnot, keeping the team vibes the same, and the guys that are around the team I think are good for the team, and I think it'll be good going into next year.
Four-man lineup for the DBD team. Of course, Gage Linville, really the flagship rider of the organization, the first guy to really put it in the main event for the team, the first guy to go up there, score a top 10, score a podium at Foxborough, and of course, Gage ended up being the first DBD rider to qualify for an SMX playoff race, bringing Jace back, of course, like you mentioned, hurt last year at several points, missed all of Supercross, then missed the first few outdoors, and then when he got back, broke his collarbone. 3 days after surgery, he was lining up for Southwick. He's been performing pretty well in Partzilla Arena Cross, as he mentioned. He's got some podiums. Gage, of course, ran the last round in Montgomery and swept the Saturday night main events, so he's also riding well. Marcus had a tough 2025, but he's hoping to get back on the right foot. And then, as you mentioned, Jackson Driscoll, fresh off his rookie season, of course, he was with the Rock River Yamaha team. So it'll be interesting to see how he progresses and continues to build. Of course, Jackson will be looking for his first main event in 2025. And with you guys behind him, there's a good shot. Now moving to the Paris Supercross. There was some sickness going around, man, in Paris. There was Mookie fever all over that city this weekend. Malcolm Stewart, what a performance. Going into the race, you have Cooper Webb, who won last year's Paris Supercross. You have Hunter Lawrence, Jet Lawrence, back again. Jet won in 2023. And, of course, the Lawrence brothers, fresh off of an incredible season, an incredible summer, and early fall for them. Plus, Tom Vial made his debut on the MXGP Team Honda HRC machine, Garibaldi Honda, whichever you prefer. But Malcolm Stewart came in a little bit under the radar. He won 4 out of the 6 main events and finished second in the other 2. I mean, what a performance for Mookie. And shout out to the guys over at FXR. Big accomplishment for FXR because they won their first Premier Class Supercross in Paris. And of course, Mookie had some custom fishing themed gear, which was pretty interesting to see. But nonetheless, the weekend started. Hunter Lawrence won Super Pole on Friday night because Jet Lawrence went down on his lap. He was pushing and then uncharacteristically went down in one of the bowl corners. Race number 1, both Lawrences went down on the first lap. Hunter in the first corner, then Jet a little bit later because Tom Vial cased a jump and then kind of just bounced into Jet Lawrence. Up front, it was Malcolm and Cooper Webb. Mookie got the win. Race number 2, Malcolm started out front again, held that top spot. Jet Lawrence really wasn't able to make up a bunch of time on him. And Malcolm was looking really, really strong early on. He continued all of his momentum. Then in race 3 was the pivotal race of the weekend, in my opinion, because Jet Lawrence pulled the whole shot, and you think, all right, this is where Jet starts to turn it around. But a couple laps into the race, 2 or 3 whoops into the whoop section, Jet is down, gets up slow, not really hurt, but just gets up and really realizes after his 8th in the first moto, like, yeah, this might not be in the cards. And then later in the race, about halfway through, the camera pans to the whoops, and you see Hunter Lawrence stuck underneath of his Honda. Meanwhile, Malcolm Stewart takes his 3rd win in a row. Incredible performance on Saturday. A perfect day for Malcolm, pretty much. Then once it got to Sunday, the Lawrence brothers rebounded a little bit. Hunter seemed like he was a little banged up, not quite on his standard level, but Jet won races number 4 and 5. And man, that 5th race was domination by Jet and Malcolm. Jet led the entire race. Malcolm was about a second or 2 back the entire time. He kept him within distance, but they put 15 seconds on Cooper Webb. Of course, the defending AMA Supercross champion, the defending Paris Supercross winner. I mean, they dropped him. And usually Cooper Webb is not somebody who tends to get dropped. Then the final main event of the weekend, Tom Vial got the whole shot. Hunter was getting sketchy immediately. The back end of his Honda almost flew out from underneath of him. Then Malcolm Stewart, he was moving up pretty quickly. He got to P3, then to P2 pretty fast. The Lawrence's mid-pack start, not great for them. And then that back rhythm lane, Mookie popped the quad and then just rode away from Webb. Jet ended up getting to third, nearly passing Webb. He was only like a bike length or two away from Cooper Webb at the end of the race. He made a really cool 2-for-1 special, as James Stewart would have called it, pass at the end of the whoops. But Malcolm Stewart, 4 wins in 6 races this weekend. He becomes the king of Paris. What a performance from him. Cooper Webb second overall. Jet Lawrence, despite an 8th and a 14th, finishes third overall. He at least salvaged a podium out of the deal. I'm sure he's ready to be home down in Australia. Of course, AUS-X Open coming up, another one of the big off-season races. What a performance from Malcolm. The Husqvarna team have to be stoked. Of course, the SX2 class, the 250 class, was also taking place. Not a ton of big names, but very entertaining racing. It was really a 2-man fight the entire time between Luke Clout and Anthony Burden. And it was the French racer winning in front of the French crowd. He won the first race. Then Clout won the next 2. Clout won the next 3, actually, the final 2 races of Saturday night. And then he won the first race on Sunday until disaster struck in race number 5 for Clout. He went on to one of the tabletops, ended up clipping Calvin Fonvielle's bike, went down, damaged his shifter. Burden won the race, and then Clout was left in 13th. He really couldn't fight anywhere forward because of his shifter damage, and that really swung things around. But it was the French racer for the French team in front of the partisan French crowd getting the win in the 250 class. Luke Clout second overall, Fonvielle third overall. Jack, you told me before this episode started that you really didn't get to catch a lot of the Paris action, but I'm sure you're probably really excited to see Malcolm Stewart up on the podium. And it feels like anytime Malcolm Stewart is up front and winning, the crowd loves it. People within the industry love it. It seems like Malcolm wins are very, very popular. And it was really cool to see him after all the headlines were really around Cooper Webb and the Lawrence brothers and even Tom Vial to an extent, that Malcolm ended up rising to the occasion and getting the job done in Paris.
Yeah, no, it was super cool to see. I mean, obviously with the Lawrence brothers being there, you kind of expect those guys to be, the people to beat. I mean, Hunter and Jet have proved them, especially Jet, obviously, has proved themselves to be the best in the world on a dirt bike right now. And when you're faced up against those guys, granted, they didn't have greatest of luck and they hit the ground a couple times, but Malcolm Stewart was definitely no slouch and definitely gave them a run for their money when, Jet was up front and, had a perfect weekend, in my opinion. Malcolm Stewart did everything he could to battle, and it paid off for him. So definitely cool to see. I know that track was, especially the whoops, were pretty gnarly. Like Tom was telling me all week that those things were some of the biggest whoops he's ever seen, and the run up to him wasn't very big, so it was hard to get on top or carry a lot of speed into the whoops. And they were taking some bikes down with Jet and Hunter going down the whoops. You would think, they're definitely tough then, right? I mean, definitely not easy seeing those two guys, probably two of the best guys in the whoops in the world, and they're eating the dirt. So. And Malcolm Stewart, being the whoop guy he is, came out on top, and it's definitely cool to see. I'm excited to see how he stacks up come A1. I think he'll be really solid.
Definitely a track favorable to Malcolm with the giant steamroller style whoops, but he was just flying through those things, and there are very few things, at least in my opinion, cooler to watch in the sport than somebody just hammering through the whoops and going full send and blowing by people. Of course, I'm a little biased considering I grew up as a James Stewart fan, and that was one of his marquee things, just blitzing by everybody in the whoops. But moving on to World Supercross now. First 2 rounds have taken place. Argentina was the Ken Roczen show. He won all 3 450 class races, battled with Justin Cooper in the second race. Third race was really dominant. It was like 15 seconds over Cooper. And then Hayden Deegan, third overall in his World Supercross debut. He was up on the podium. Pretty quiet race for Deegan standards. No shenanigans. Realistically, Deegan wasn't really starting well in any of those races, but he was patient, worked his way through the pack, ended up taking third overall. Not a bad debut for Deegan, but I feel like a lot of people expected him to be battling for the win up front. He will be back in the third round of World Supercross next weekend in Gold Coast, Australia, and we might have a better idea of where he stacks up considering Eli Tomac and Cooper Webb will be two of the wild card racers for that weekend. This weekend, we're just a couple days removed from the Vancouver World Supercross. The defending WSX champion, Eli Tomac, he was back, and he was in his first appearance on a KTM, and boy, did he look good. 1-2-1 finishes. Eli looked pretty comfortable aboard the KTM, of course, still adapting to the new machine. Carlos Rivera was on the broadcast talking about how KTM, of course, for many years, was working against Eli Tomac when they had guys like Ryan Dungey, Marvin Musquin, Cooper Webb, and now they get to see the inner workings of Eli Tomac, and it was a very successful debut for ET3, or ET1 in this case, aboard the Orange Machine. Ken Roczen second overall. He won that second race. Kenny looked good, but he mentioned the track being very technical, very challenging. And Jason Anderson, shout out to El Hombre, getting on the podium. His first podium with the Pipes Motorsports Group Suzuki organization. And then in the 250 class, it's been the Max Anstey show. Max has won all 6 races so far. He's on track for a perfect season. I know people are probably going to be like, oh, it's a 5-round championship, perfect season. But if somehow he goes 15 for 15, that's going to be an incredible accomplishment. Of course, Max racing for the GSM Yamaha team, albeit aboard his usual Star Racing machine. If Max was not in that class, it would be an incredible battle, and I'm not trying to take away from Max, but he's been dominating, and really 2 through 7 has gone crazy with fluctuation every week. There are guys mixing it up. You have Cody Schock, Enzo Lopes, Shane McElrath, the defending champion, and then guys like Cullen Park, Cole Thompson, Kyle Peters. Michael Hicks is mixing it up sometimes in there on the Stark electric bike. But realistically, it's a one-man show in terms of the championship. Anstey, when you win 6 main events in 6 tries, it really extends that points lead as soon as the season starts. And he is looking fantastic. And I know you said in our World Supercross predictions that you could see Max Anstey winning an AMA Supercross 250 title. And boy, your predictions are looking really good right now because he seems to be on another level. I know Schock kept up with him in a couple of the main events this weekend, but still, he's not really been challenged for the lead at all. He's got out front. His starts have been great, and he's been pulling away other than a couple of races. He looks fantastic. I'd love to hear your thoughts on WSX so far. Some interesting stuff going on. Of course, some questions surrounding Ken Roczen's potential involvement in the rest of the series. I've heard some rumblings, but I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. Kenny is currently the points leader, but we'll see if he makes it to all of the World Supercross rounds. Eli Tomac, a fantastic debut aboard the KTM. Hayden Deegan, podium in his 450 debut. Plus, a little bit of beef this weekend between Cullen Park and Cole Thompson. It was fun to watch. Some aggressive racing between the two there. Of course, Thompson in his home country race and Cullen Park exchanging words. Hopefully Cullen didn't insult poutine or maple syrup or anything like that to really get him upset, but it seemed like it ended up cooling down by the end of the night. Jack, thoughts on World Supercross so far? There's been some entertaining moments, and I'm really excited for this next round of Gold Coast, like I mentioned, with where Deegan stacks up against Tomac, Webb, Roczen if he's there, Anderson. It's going to be really interesting with a couple more elite names in the field to see where he truly stands, plus a couple more rounds after that in Sweden and South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, the World Supercross Championship, I got to give props to them. They're doing a pretty good job, Granted, some of the streaming issues they've had, but I think all the kinks will get worked out here soon. But just the quality of riders they've seen they've brought in and the money they're paying out seems to be pretty solid. And I think that's what riders want, right, is to make some money doing what they love to do. And if they can somehow make it a more of a championship start racing, kind of lose the wild cards and let guys like Tomac and Roxon and Anderson and, the J Coops and all that kind of, maybe they can start racing the whole series and really make a championship out of it that's worth watching. I mean, not that it's not worth watching right now, but having those guys of those caliber being able to race the whole series would be, huge for them. So it was cool. I mean, Hayden Deegan making his debut on the 450, I think that definitely brought some eyes. And I think if they keep making those right steps and making it interesting for people to watch, I think that's what people want to watch is good battles. And this off-season racing is not really becoming off-season anymore. It's becoming part of the season, and it's extending the life of the dirt bikes, and it's kind of becoming a year-round thing, which is, for us motocross, supercross fans, it's great, But yeah, I think the World Supercross Championship's been really good. I think that the battles have been good. I think that's all you can ask for. And Max Anstey, granted, has been riding phenomenally, and I think a lot of it has to do with how good his starts are and how short these races are. I think with them being like heat races, 8 laps, it's like 2 heat races and then like a kind of like a mini main event at the end. It kind of suits his style, in my opinion. He's such like a fast-paced rider, and he can kind of run those fast laps for, 10 to 12 minutes at a time. And, I think I'll be interested to see if he doesn't get a start and how he does and how he manages through the field. I don't think any of those guys that are racing inside that top 7 are any slouches. I don't think Cody Schock, Lopes, Cullen, Cole Thompson, and Peters are, easy guys to get around by any means. I mean, I think Max is definitely better than all of those guys, and definitely has the ability to beat them on any given day. But yeah, and like McElrath, of course. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how the rest of the series plays out. I know the Gold Coast for the 450 class is going to be pretty stacked, being Cooper Webb, Hayden Deegan, and Eli Tomac are all supposed to be racing that one. So yeah, I mean, it's been a cool series to watch, and they seem to be pulling in some good fans. That Argentina round that they had sold out, and the BC place looks like it had quite a few people there. It's a pretty big stadium, so I'm sure the Australia round will be pretty packed, and hopefully Stockholm and Cape Town deliver as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to watching these last couple rounds, as well as the AUS-X Open, and seeing how those guys perform. And I think the World Supercross thing, I mean, as long as there's good battles, I think people are going to tune in. So that's all they can really ask for. And I think that the tracks have been pristine and solid, and they're letting it get rough, and they're not doing things to make it easy. The whoops have been gnarly. They're adding more than 9 whoops, which is cool to see. I think Supercross, I think they're getting rid of that rule, the 9 whoop rule, so that'll be good and solid. So I think if they can maintain the good racing part of it, I think that series has a really good chance to prosper and become something that more riders do in the future, which will be cool. So, but I'm definitely excited to see these next 2 off-season ones, 2 races in Australia with the AUS-X Open and the WSX in Australia.
It'll be interesting to see who ends up getting the job done. Of course, 2 heavy favorites in each class for World Supercross, but definitely some interesting stories to continue following over there. Jack, I know you brought up something before we went on air talking about some insight from the WSX series. I don't know if you were wanting to share that necessarily on our episode, but what have you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, seemed to be eating up the whole Cullen Park, Cole Thompson situation, which was kind of cool. I mean, he was, if you watch the broadcast, I mean, you can kind of see it, but it gets brought up really well in the second moto when Cole Thompson makes his way by Cullen, that he was like cross jumping a lot. And Cole's not the nicest rider on the track. I would say he's kind of not a dirty rider by any means, but he's definitely, and he always seems to perform at these off-season, out-of-country races for some reason, compared to how he does in Supercross. He's kind of like, you kind of don't know where he's at when he's racing Supercross in America. But yeah, no, Colin was telling me how he, in the first race, him and Cole were kind of going back and forth and making some runs out in that last corner. Cole was trying to mess with him or get his head or whatever, and basically tried to take him out on the sight lap. It's like, what? Like, Cullen was like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, basically almost made himself crash, and then Cullen luckily was able to get the better of him in the last 2 motos in Vancouver, which was good to see. It's been cool to watch World Supercross thing, and bringing it back to Paris. Even that race was good, 450 wise, and the amount of guys that are racing in these is always cool to see. And Tom gave me some good insight on how he was feeling on his new bike and how well set up that Honda is and how it's very, he says it's one of the best bikes he's ever ridden. Granted, probably the best bike he's ridden, and how good it is on Supercross. And he says, I can see why now the Lawrences are so good because this bike is unbelievable. So, yeah, I mean, the World Supercross has been spicy for sure.
I thought it was pretty entertaining considering, I'm not super close with Cullen like you are, but interviewing him a few times and just knowing his usual personality and disposition, he's usually a guy that doesn't really get mad, doesn't really get too worked up, and seeing him a little bit in the heat of the moment, showing some more aggression, some more fire, a little bit more angry was pretty interesting to see. And like you mentioned, Cole Thompson has a reputation of sorts, not like a Vince Freezy level guy where he's got that reputation of just making moves and cleaning people out, but Cole is definitely an aggressive racer, and I think you could clearly see on the broadcast the second moto where he was cross-jumping a little bit, but Park ended up getting the last laugh. Now moving on a little bit to some of the silly season news that's dropped. Of course, last episode we mentioned we expected to hear the KTM news. It finally dropped. Eli Tomac, of course, made his debut in Vancouver on the machine looking good. His new home for the year. Of course, Aaron Plessinger and Julian Beaumer are back with the team. Juju, unfortunately, probably going to miss Supercross due to his injury from the Charlotte SMX round. But he should be back for outdoors, hopefully. And, of course, Jorge Prado joining the team. Today, there was an announcement. We finally got word of the Ducati lineup, the Troy Lee Designs Ducati Red Bull factory racing team. I might have messed that up slightly, but it's those words in some kind of order. Regardless, we expected it to be Justin Barcia and Dylan Ferrandis. It was indeed Justin Barcia and Dylan Ferrandis, of course. Justin Barcia, plenty of experience with the TLD crew, won some races with them aboard the gas machine. And Dylan Ferrandis, great opportunity for him to get back aboard a factory team after spending the last couple years with the Phoenix Racing Honda crew. And then one signing I think is a little bit under the radar, but I think could pay off really well throughout the season. Lux Turner, who's been performing incredibly well in Australian Supercross. He is the 250 class points leader in that series. His first year racing down under. Lux is on a Yamaha for 2026. He is a part of the Toyota Redlands Bar X Yamaha crew, joining Dylan Schwartz and Parker Ross, plus guys like Leo Tucker will be running the outdoor season. Cole Timbo will run SMX Next Supercross and then go full-time pro outdoors. Nathan Abbott will also be in the SMX Next ranks. And speaking of those guys who are trying to make a name for themselves and build toward the professional ranks, Landen Gordon, who won 3 of the races in 2025. He won a pair of the Supercross ones, one in Glendale, one in Daytona. He also won the overall in the MX Combine at Redbud in July. But Landen Gordon moving from Team Green Kawasaki to Monster Energy Yamaha Star Racing. Of course, the Will Hahn connection could be a big part of that. Hahn was Landen's trainer for many years, and of course Will join the Star Yamaha team once again during the summer. But another rider, I think 4 amateur guys now for Star, if they keep their lineup of Dudney, Minier, and Carson Wood from last year. Jack, go ahead and give me your thoughts on the silly season moves. Of course, some of these we've talked about for a while. I knew Ducati is one we've anticipated for a while, and we expected it to be Barcia and Ferrandis. Then, of course, we talked about Eli Tomac's first race on KTM. Looked fantastic. Now Jorge Prado has a second chance with his brand, and he's got some sweet clips on Instagram. I'm not going to lie. He looks like he's ripping on that bike. Of course, he had so much success on KTM or Gas in the MXGP series. And then some other signings. Lux Turner on a Yamaha, looking good so far, and Aussie Land and Landen Gordon moving teams. Another potential Star Yamaha guy in the next few years. I can't wait until the 250 class is just a Star Yamaha spec class, or maybe even futures, because it seems like every year there's like 12 guys on that team or 10 guys, and they just keep growing. But man, silly season. Some of the biggest moves now finally revealed, finally out in public. Waiting for Husqvarna is the big one now, but we finally got some more news. tell us your thoughts about it and what you expect from some of these new rides and new faces at different teams for 2026.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off first with the whole Tomac to KTM thing. I mean, we all knew that one was coming. We all knew KTM was throwing some money at Tomac to get him to stay around. And I mean, how he looked at in Vancouver was solid. I think he's got, some potential to do well, and I think that he will do well. I'm interested to see if he can win any races. I think he has the ability to, but I think he's getting to the point in his career where it's if the front half of the year starts off really good for him, which it definitely could, he has a chance to fight for a title. But if it starts off slow, kind of like it did this year, where he didn't really have a great A1, didn't really have a good race until San Diego, which I believe was the second round, I think he won that race. But then it kind of fell off again. Glendale, he picked it up a little bit, but then kind of fell off in that midseason range. If he can kind of avoid that and stay on the podium, throughout the first, 8 rounds or whatever, I think he has a really good chance of fighting for the title. I mean, I think he got hurt last year, right, Trey?
Yeah, he was hurt. Round 5, Tampa, gets injured. He races through the injury, 15th, I believe, maybe, and then got hurt. I think you're thinking a lot of 2024 when he was kind of off most of the year, at least from his normal standards. He got a few podiums. He got the win in that Triple Crown at St. Louis. He did win San Diego last year, or 2025, I should say. But Eli, really, in 2024, he wasn't that elite level speed, or at least that weekly threat that we were used to. Of course, he was coming off of his Achilles injury then. But I do agree with your points. If he starts strong, and he does have that 11-year streak of at least one main event victory in every season, and he wants to continue. It's the longest streak in AMA Supercross history, and I'm sure he wants to add to it. And I think we forget, too, that he's second on the all-time AMA Supercross wins list. It's not James Stewart. It's not Chad Reed. It's not Ryan Villapoto or Ricky Carmichael. It's Eli Tomac. I think it's going to be very interesting and some very positive early signs for Eli on KTM.
I think if he can get through that first couple rounds, if he can win a race or two, if he can get through that midseason gap and get to rounds, once we get to round 13 or 14, if he's, within 20 points, I think he's got a real chance of winning that title. I think he can kind of come on strong and late in the season and be good. I don't think we should count him out at all. I think he'll be a threat for sure. It's just going to take a strong first 7 rounds, in my opinion, for him to cement himself in that title race. Good for Landen. I think they'll still be with Dudney, Wood, and Nadir. SMX next, which Stire Racing Yamaha could probably have a blow crew of it on every race, and they'd fill at least half the gate, being how many guys they have on their team now, So, love turning to Barrex. I think it's a really good sign for him, for his career. I think it's a step forward in his career. Moving off the KTM bike onto a Yamaha, Barrex seems to be. And then Barsha and Ferranis to Ducati. I think it'll probably be a slow year, but I think those are 2 guys that are very analytical of their motorcycle. I think that's 2 completely different riders too. Barsha's kind of a ring it and kind of let it hang, and Ferranis is a little bit more calculated and a little bit more controlled compared to Barsha. But I think that'll give them at least insight into 2 different types of riders. You get a guy like Barsha and a guy like Ferranis on your team. They're both veterans and they both can compete and potentially in the podium. But I think they'll probably have some first year struggles. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see that bike in form. I mean, Charlie Designs, his teams have always been some of the coolest setups, in the pits, So I'm excited to see that bike in action and see how everything goes. And hopefully next season we get some good battles and, the teams are shaping up nice. There's still a couple announcements that probably that won't get announced for the next couple of weeks. I think Dax Bennick will be on the Rockstar Husky machine alongside Casey Cochran and Ryder DeFrancisco and Landon Gibson on the amateur team, which I believe he is planned to make his pro debut full-time in outdoors. Don't quote me on that, but I want to say that's his goal at least. And then, yeah, I mean, that's about it. That's all I know. That hasn't been announced quite yet, but, I'm excited to see how Dax does on Husqvarna. I mean, he came from KTM back when he's an amateur, and he's pretty solid, so I think he'll be pretty good, and I think it'll be a good move for him in his career just to kind of get out of that whole star racing thing. And it's kind of a lot going on out there with Gagan and all the guys that are kind of battling throughout the week. I think he kind of maybe a change of scenery might help him load the speed. Just kept staying healthy and put it together consistently. So I'll like to see how he does. But yeah, the silly season moves have been good, and not a whole lot more news to be dropped. I mean, a couple more rider announcements. The A1 season's shaping up nicely.
It is definitely getting closer and closer to Anaheim 1, and I agree with a lot of your takes on those situations. I feel like it's make or break for Prado. Of course, he has plenty of success in the past with KTM and Gas, but after the Kawasaki incidents and some of the things he pulled, that's not going to fly over here. And he might be sent back to Europe on a one-way ticket if things continue to go poorly. But man, he's been ripping in some of these clips on social media. Lux to Barx, I think, is a really strong move, especially with how he's looked down under in Australia. And Ducati, you got two veterans there, a ton of expertise. Of course, Justin Barcia has won for a lot of different bikes before. The last time he showed up at a season opener on a brand new red bike that has never raced in America before in Supercross, he won the thing. So maybe Justin Barcia wins Anaheim 1 this year. I doubt it, but you never know. He's usually pretty strong at A1, and Ferrandis getting back to a factory seat. Definitely two guys that could help the bike along and help things progress, and guys that are very, very set in their ways and know exactly what they want. It will be interesting to see. Also kind of funny knowing their history from a few years ago where Barcia flat out took Ferrandis out or whatever. I don't remember what race for sure. It was either Unadilla or Budds Creek in 2022, but funny to see that they're teammates now. That's how the sport of racing works. And we've had some silly season moves over in the MXGP series. Of course, we've talked about Tom Vial to Honda. He just got aboard that bike, rode it at the Paris Supercross. Jack just said that he loves the bike, feels very good on it. So it'll be interesting to see how Tom performs throughout the year. I think early on, he might be a 5 to 8 guy as he continues to adapt, and he's never raced a 450 MXGP before. Plus, you're going to have guys like Fevra, Koonin, Geiser, Hurlings, the Wolf, all of those guys coming into the year healthy. But I think as the season continues on, there's a really good chance we're going to see Vial on the podium a lot, and maybe even getting his first 450 win. It'll be interesting to see there. Of course, the Wolf, as we mentioned last episode, moving to the 450. Andrea Adamo also moving up to the 450 class. So 3 former MX2 world champions will be in the 450 ranks this year, or joining the 450 ranks this year. Adamo staying with factory KTM. And then there were some moves over in the Ducati team in Europe. The Wilvo organization that were running the Fantic factory team previously ran the Yamaha factory team for a few years. They are now in charge of the Ducati factory organization. Jeremy Sewer remaining with the team, Calvin Vlanderen moving over from factory Yamaha, Andrea Bonacorsi moving over from factory Fantic. So Ducati still has their Italian representation, as well as keeping a couple guys familiar with the Wilvo operation and how things work in Sewer and Vlanderen. And it's a solid team. Interesting to see how Ducati will keep growing. I don't really expect wins, but definitely some podiums from guys like Sewer and Vlanderen. And of course, Bonacorsi was really solid in his first full 450 year this year. But that pretty much wraps up all of the recent news and happenings in the sport, apart from the off-season races. Before we conclude, I did mention wanting to run down the points a little bit, just to mention and to let people know who might not be watching some of these off-season races what's going on. First, taking a look at World Supercross, Ken Roczen, if he runs the full season, he's in a really good spot right now because he has a 20-point lead over Jason Anderson, 22 points over Justin Cooper, who, of course, is a wild card and probably won't be racing anymore the rest of that season, 25 over Christian Craig. Then in the 250 class, Max Anstey, already a 26-point lead over Cody Schock. Schock has a nice little gap over his teammate Enzo Lopes in third, but you look on down the line, that 3rd through 7th range, like I mentioned, Lopes is on 62, McElrath 59, Thompson 57, Park 54, Peters 49. It is all really close right together. Then you look over at the Australian Supercross points, and man, Dean Wilson is performing incredibly well. He's won all of the main events so far, and he has a 30-point lead over his teammate Cedric Supercross. Shout out to Hayden Melross, man. A guy who used to race in America for the 5150 Yamaha team, if you guys remember that. Hayden is third place in the Australian Supercross 450 standings right now, aboard a privateer KTM. Awesome to see him performing well. Luke Clout, Mitchell Harrison rounding out the top 5 in those standings. Phil Nicoletti at 8th. Come on, Philip, step up a little bit. SX2 class, of course, as we mentioned as well. Lux Turner dominating there. He has a 26-point lead over his teammate, Ryder Kingsford, on the Yamaha. Then Alex Larwood in third with 103. Tiger Wood fourth on the Firepower Honda. And Jace Cosford, another one of the Yamaha guys, in fifth position. We look at the Partzilla Arena Cross Series, which returns this weekend in Fayetteville, Arkansas. In the Pro Open class, Aiden Shive continues to lead the points. He has an 11-point gap over Rockstar Husqvarna's Landen Gibson. Aiden, of course, won the first Open Pro main event of the season. He's been pretty solid in terms of finishing on the podium and running in the top 5. It's been a good year for him so far. Interesting to see Aiden Shive, the first dirt bike rider I ever got a chance to interview. But really cool to see Aiden performing well on his KTM, backed by HBI Racing. Then the 250 Pro standings, it is Landen Gibson out front. He has an 8-point gap over Liam Aloff. Hamden Hudson in third, so both Partzilla, PRMX, Blaster Power, Kawasaki guys right there in the mix as well. Jace Kessler from the Dirt Bike Depot, WMR KTM team setting there in fourth. Defending champion Luke Neese in fifth. Kessler is seventh in the Open Pro standings for those at home. And that should do it. This has been episode number 19 of the Stire Sound. Lots of off-season racing. Lots of off-season moves we've covered in this episode. Anything else you want to add before we officially wrap this thing up and continue on with the off-season?
No, sir. I'm excited to get some more racing and get to watch some more racing these next couple weekends.
AUS-X Open coming up. World Supercross, rounds 3, 4, and 5 on the docket. We'll talk about round 3 next episode. You will see us again in 2 weeks. Thank you for listening wherever you are listening from. I am Trey Stire. For Jack Noel, this has been the Stire Sound, and the Stire Sound is fading out. Happy Thanksgiving, folks.